Okay, it's almost 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call this Village of Hebron Combined Council Committee meeting on April 17, 2024, 6 p.m. to order. And I would like to invite you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Nauer?
Yes.
Mrs. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Porter?
Yes.
I'd like to acknowledge the visitors to this combined meeting. Are there any comments from any visitors? Please come forward, state your name and address.
My name's Harold Gardner. I live on 117 Hamilton Avenue. I got a couple simple questions, and of course, I spoke with Mallory on the possible school project, which I think is a very good fit for Hebron, as long as it doesn't bankrupt us, you know? Because there's a lot there. There's more there than probably meets the eye. The simple question is, are we still doing a pie festival this year? Uh-oh.
Well, first of all, I just want to make sure the microphone is on. I just want to make sure we can hear you.
How's that?
Hold it in.
On?
Yep. You there?
Yeah, there we go.
Sorry. Are we still doing a pie festival this year?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So, the village does have that on the anticipated events calendar for the year.
Right?
So we're just building that out. We haven't publicized it widely yet. We're still getting confirmation about affordability and that we have the funding for it. And of course, we need to go through an exercise with council to confirm that council would support the Pie Festival as well. So that will be upcoming. So the short answer is we believe so. But the long answer is we still need to do some due diligence.
It's my understanding that it may be in September.
That is correct.
Okay. One of the things that you gotta look at is, like the night show goes on during that time. Okay, so you need to schedule not on that day. My understanding is maybe you'd like to do a car show with that, use, Ron's lot or whatever. I think if you continue to do this, you could build it considerably. A couple of years ago, I wanted to do a car show here, and of course, the parking was a problem. So moved it to Indian Mill Mall, and we were a huge success. We had over 200 cars. So it can be done, you just need to have a draw line for that. So that was one of my concerns. The other one is Hamilton Avenue flooding. We got some real problems. Kenny's aware of those. What they did in front of my house, my neighbor's house is atrocious. Water's gotta flow uphill to get to the catch basin. The slope is wrong. They need to come back and refill, both my neighbors and myself. One of the other problems is when they put in the tile, it's perforated. And when the creek backs up, it blows water up through the ground. My yard still hasn't dried out from the last year's rain. So, I think a little bit more planning needs to be done before they jump into a project like that. Like I spoke with Jung Chen yesterday, which I appreciate your time you gave me. You're putting a Band-Aid on a sore. You expense a lot of money into that, and in my opinion, it was a waste of money. You need to plan out a little bit more. Maybe you divide Hamilton in half and run it down to the city sewer on Main Street, because it seems to handle everything. Am I right, Kenny? But then I don't know what to do the rest of the street that Mallory lives on. So, that was one of my big concerns, because it's going to continue to get worse. It's not going to get better. And then, of course, I have questions which will meet with you later on the school project. There's a lot there. Like I said, I think it's a huge fit. I think it'd be beneficial to Hebron, you know, as long as it doesn't hurt us financially. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments from the visitors, Lakewood students? Thank you. And following to that, we will have a presentation from Licking County, soil and water conservations. And I have been invited Linda and Nicodemus to give us a brief summary of what they do.
Hi. I made sure to bring you all a packet of information so that we didn't have to go through everything that has been done in our program. And I know that we had emailed a lot of this information out also to our consortium. The first bit of information is all the new things that we had done and accomplished in 2023, which is quite a large project. We've added to the staff. We have begun our dry weather screening and outfall testing and stormwater mapping throughout the county and the unincorporated areas. We come out and support, we're able to support with staff. Hebron, just like our other co-permittees, have someone in urban stormwater who is assigned to your area. So they can give support and staff help whenever you need it, for your stormwater issues. We finished up ours altogether, the annual report. So you have a copy of the consortium annual report that was submitted ahead of time for the due date to the EPA. You also have just a brief summary from our urban technician, Nick Garabuzzo. And it tells what we had accomplished and maintained just for the village of Hebron. And that's not including the education and outreach. So your MS4 permit requires you to have education in your schools and outreach programs, public participation programs. It requires someone who has an educator's license, which we have in our office, Deirdre Wise, and Abby Hogue. So they are in your schools. The second set of documents behind Nick's summary is everything we did in education and outreach, including the hours within all those different schools in our districts. So that you could see what types of programs, you could see what schools were included in that. I believe the final piece, a document that I have is the new breakdown that came with your invoice this year. I had brought that to so you all had a copy. You had the basic charges on yours because your staff did your dry weather screening and outfall testing. You have your stormwater mapped in your GIS. So those were things, we didn't have to do for you. So active construction sites and your operation and maintenance agreements and your post stormwater inspections, you do yourselves, which is a requirement of the permit. Some of the places that we're finding that still need to be worked on, are the small, lots and agricultural development. There's a lot of misconception that if someone's agricultural, they're exempt from stormwater, and that is not a truth. So they are not exempt. There's no one exempt, not the municipality, not anybody within your municipality or in the townships are exempt from the stormwater regulations. They're required to do it. So whenever you're out there and you see what may look to be someone moving dirt that could be about an acre, you can contact us. We'll be glad to come out and take a look at that. there's also a place for, more education and outreach. Abby, we started with us at the end of May, right after she graduated from college. She does she's updating all our websites, all of our material, which I brought some new, brochures and pamphlets in. She does Facebook posts and she sends them out so you guys can share those, which will meet one of your requirements. I know we've met out here on a couple of different, complaints or problems with drainage. We will do that at any point, meet with your staff, to help you with your stormwater and your flooding, so. Do you guys have any questions for me?
And I have a couple questions that come from this.
Oh, okay. I don't have that.
This is entitled Village of Hebron. Village of Hebron, a stormwater utility formation presented by V3 Company.
That is not part of.
That is not
yeah,
part of
that's
yours
correct.
because it's V3.
Yep.
But nevertheless, if that comes around, I still have the questions.
Yep,
Okay. Would you like
I
me to
get your
stay,
number.
or you can call me?
I can do that.
I'll leave you my card. So do you have any questions? I think one of our biggest questions, that we've had from our co-permittees, was, do we have to do stormwater? Well, you do because you were notified by the EPA that you have to do it. You share a permit with us and, Licking County Commissioners so that you can share in the cost and not have to hire and do all the things that are provided that you need to do to be compliant with your permit. So it's the new, invoicing. The old invoicing was just hard to follow. They charged for weird things, but it was back from 2014. So the rates had not increased since 2014. Now you have a document. We did not up the rates. These are the actual rates I found on the books at, Soil and Water once I started. So this is the rate we've charged all the MOUs for those education and outreach and those, different programs, and the hourly rate is the rate that has always been on our books. So we just wanted to clarify that if you need it, you find that you're maybe without a stormwater person to do inspections or staff, you can always call upon your partners here at Soil and Water, and we'll be glad to come and help. Thank you.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one quick question. Is there anything I should be doing as the mayor of the village to advance this issue? I will say that this spring has been a very eye-opening experience, and most people in this room have heard me talking about sleepless nights and worrying about, what we're gonna be able to do for our residents. The administration is talking through some strategies of things that we want to accomplish and work that we could be doing, but as you think about how Hebron is partnering with your organization, is there space where immediately it comes to mind, golly, it would make a big difference if you did X?
Well, we had that meeting earlier today. Village of Hebron has been very proactive, especially since 2012's flood, in getting flood studies and an H&H approved, which I just saw that FEMA now has published your stormwater map. So the floodplain is now identified. You guys did that. So every property within the Village of Hebron, if they come to your community development coordinator and say, I want to build, and they see that they're in a floodplain, they can give them the elevation they need to build out of so that they don't have, or they have less damages. The grant for the critical infrastructure, that was based that you're using that data to come up with the best places to do flood mitigation projects, whether it's storage or flooding, culverts. We talked about that today, putting flood culverts by culverts that aren't that old, but they weren't built to handle a larger rain event. So it'll help keep the banks within an area, and different areas within that we had identified that could be areas. So you've hired someone, you're using that data, you're coming up with these solutions. Those are the best things that you can do for your residents. A lot of places are way behind. They don't have that. They haven't been proactive in trying to complete these things. And you have, from the 2015 flood study to the H&H study that was done, to sending that to FEMA, does this really work? And they said yes. And now getting a grant to start working on possible mitigation projects. We can't stop flooding from happening in a floodplain. The perfect storm, 2012, the ground was frozen and it rained here for 7 hours. There's no stopping rain like that. It flooded places in Hebron. We're in a bowl, which is why the Erie Canal was put here years ago, is because this is a bowl where the water came. So the best thing we can do, and you can do, is work on those mitigations. How can we keep the water within their banks the longest period of time? Where can we find areas for it to get to spread out when it's not going through town quick enough that doesn't harm your residents? So those are your big things. That I know that when I was the stormwater coordinator here, I had talked to residents over and over about what if you had to pay a stormwater utility to help with changing the size of the infrastructure that is put in here. When you know you're in a 100-year floodplain, but the minimum standard ODOT has is a 25-year rain event, then everything that you've gotten grants for over the years has been put in based on that minimum standard. But we know we have larger rains than that.
Yeah.
So we know that infrastructure needs to be updated and improved. Pipes need to be larger, drains, things need to make sense. And now that you have the data to show where those best places are, now's the time to do it. And people were willing back then. I said, what if we put $5 on your water bill? They didn't have issues with that. If that was going to help update their drainage and help them deal with stormwater. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Linda.
Very welcome.
The next item is the pending legislation. There are two that will come before you at the next week's meeting. Ordinance number 13-24, an ordinance to establish 2 hours parking upon a section of East Main Street and to erect signage for the same purpose. That will be a second reading. Ordinance number 14-24, an ordinance to establish 2-hour parking upon a section of East Main Street and to erect signage for the same purpose. That's the first reading. There seems to be some this discussion among the legal staff that whether we will present that as a first reading or present that as an amendment as a second reading. So that's what we put this to in case they decide which route they want to go. Yeah. The next item is the committee report. The first item is from the Public Works Committee. Specifically relates to the stormwater utility. In your packet, staff provided you the presentation that was made by B3 back in June of 2022. The stormwater utility study was commenced in 2020. About a year and a half, B3 collected information and devised a formula to determine what kind of stormwater utility fee should be assessed. They call it the equivalent residential unit. So based on the impervious area that each property has, so that will becomes the monthly base fee to be assessed to each property. And then because there are different type of land use, you have residential, you have commercial, you have industrial. So they develop approximately 40-something subcategories for all of these. So in this PowerPoint presentation, I think it's page 3 or 4, you will, actually, no, I'm sorry. There's no numbers on it, but you can see that stormwater drilling category.
We don't have that.
You,
They were in your map office. With
I'll
your,
go get
with your agenda.
I'll go get them.
Sorry.
Okay.
I looked in my mailbox.
Yeah, mine was 17.
Oh, I have them, all of them. Only 3 of the council members want the.
Well, it's
They
not
were-
in the computer.
no.
Okay.
So, but when you look at that PowerPoint presentation material, they provided you with the, different categories. So, see, there's no. Yeah.
Can I borrow yours, son?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, let me go.
So there are different type of land use categories.
Thank you.
Right. This was also presented to the Public Works Committee on March 25th. So committee member will have a copy of that. That's fine. Basically, what their recommendation, and they made a presentation to city council at that time in June of 2022. There seemed to be some concern about the nonprofit. But I think right now we're getting to the point, we need to move forward with this program. So they recommended the ERU for a single family is $6.52 per month. But keep in mind is that this was presented in 2022, so we need to include the extra inflation factors in there. So we're looking at maybe $7 per month. And if we collect $6.52, so annually, that will generate $280,000. At this point in time, there is no dedicated funding for stormwater because we have to use the general fund to do any stormwater improvements. So that's what the Public Works asking for the general fund dollars, and then out of maybe 2 or 3 line items, they can use that for stormwater. And because this also creates the issue that when we are applying for different grants, there has to be some kind of local match. Or if we're applying for construction dollars, there has to be some kind of local match. So by creating this stormwater utility fund, they create a single source of revenue for this specific purpose. It's similar to the water and sanitary, because you have a water fund specific goes into this account for water improvement upgrade, same thing with sanitary. So this is what we're looking at, creating a fund specifically just for the storm water utility. So Mr. Harrell was talking about the Hamilton Avenue. We need to deal with the stormwater. And if we have this fund, then we can utilize this fund to address the stormwater issue on Hamilton Avenue. So like I said, if we implemented this program, so it would generate about $282,000 based on the 2022 numbers.
Per year?
Per year, that's correct, per year. So this is what we are asking you down the road in the next couple of weeks to consider adopting this stormwater utility fund. Because we have a lot of issues that we need to deal with, and we cannot continue to patch work addressing them. We need to come up with a sustainable income source to look at the stormwater issue in a very global fashion, which can determine what project needs to be funded and what time needs to be done. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I believe that we talked about it, but I'm not recalling the date. If this was enacted, how soon would that be before the funds were available for usage?
We will have to work tweaking the building system, because we will have to look at each individual property to determine what the assessed value is. Again, like I said early on, we create the ERU, so that will be on the basis, because based on the impervious impervious area you have on each parcel, and that determines what the dollar value will be. So there are logistic issues we gotta deal with, so I cannot take specific timeframe, but I think at least 6 months minimum that we can implement this if the council decides that we will adopt this utility, stormwater utility fees. Then probably about 6 months, we can see that. Yes,
If I understand correctly, an ERU is per property, which I'll further translate, meaning into residential.
yes.
How do we assess commercial and industrial?
Again, based on that, ERU is about roughly 3,600 square foot impervious surface. So that will be divided by the impervious surface on the commercial and industrial, see what the value that assessment needs to be. When you look at the PowerPoint presentation, so they provide you some, like a medium value. For instance, light manufacturing is $166 per month. But again, that will be based on the unit of ERU for that particular property.
I also am reading where ERUs are based on characteristics and use of the property's single-family residential and two-family/duplex as one ERU per property. What if there are 3 on a piece of property?
That would be considered multifamily.
And that has a different rate,
That is correct.
so why is 2 not multifamily?
I suspect that use category is based on, maybe a state definition, because single and two family are considered non-multifamily.
Would it be considered the square footage of the house there too?
That is also another factor, but multifamily, the definition is more than 3. So a single family, two family is not considered multifamily. And that is also in our zoning code as well.
Just thinking often gets me into trouble. So industrial and commercial has its own formula
Yeah, based on the.
based on the square
Yeah,
footage of the building and parking lot. But the average has been determined to be $166 a month, and who came up with that figure?
Again, B3 went through the inventory using I think they using, the sample, to come up with this, dollar values.
So that value will be assessed onto commercial and industrial,
Right.
in addition to the pre-treatment.
Yes, no, those are total, two different functions.
I
Yes.
understand they're 2 different
Yeah.
functions,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, that will be
That will be
a
assessed.
cost that goes to commercial
Right.
and industrial.
Yes,
Do you have any idea, just off the top of your head, what those fees are?
I do not. And that's why it's going to
I
take
didn't really
yeah.
expect you to have that, but I was just curious, because now we're hitting them with $166 per month, which probably will be, you might get some pushback from that, and you might get some real irritation, but, that coupled with the other might be significant, and I don't know what that is. But I'm sure at the very least, it'll be an irritation.
Sure.
You know,
And the-
something like a thistle in your fingers, you know, it'd be a real.
Yeah. And that's why I mentioned earlier, it'll take us at least 6 months to get every parcel's value identified.
Oh, at least.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I don't doubt that at all. And in fact, if you could do it in 6 months, that would be, because the legislation has to pass first, so that'll take a month or 6 weeks. So now we're into fall, which is how it is.
And then we just want to have this issue before you, so the council can make the determination.
I think it
whether-
might be important to, communicate that to all levels of commercial, industrial, residential, because I don't think they'd be real happy just getting something without any knowledge. You know, if there's something, you know, this is coming down the pike, you might want to be aware of it. Newsletter
Oh.
could go into that, so that would be an item for Brittany.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I think at a certain point, maybe when we are conducting the pre-treatment, we can bring that up to speed of this, potential assessment that may come down as well. So we need to utilize all the means and communications, avenues that we can deploy to, educate them. Because remember, this is an issue that we need to address. We just don't have the funding for it.
Yeah,
With this, yes, we will have funding, yes.
yes. I don't have anything else at this point
Thank you.
for this.
I have a question over the stormwater. Has there been a tracking method for all the problem areas within Hebron? And I'm asking that to see if there might be areas that we want to identify or prioritize when and if we can begin to start the working.
And actually, that's interesting that you brought it up because at earlier, I think it was 3:30 meeting, that group of people already talking about what areas that home to be impacted by flooding. So those are the areas that we will be focusing on. If we get this approved, I need to look at those remediation action to those areas.
If you don't mind, I could bring something to
Yeah.
people. If you have questions on the different ways that you can handle stormwater utility, Newark's been doing it for a very long time. Lindsay Brighton is someone you can go talk to. She's a stormwater manager at Newark. They have been very creative, very early on with schools and things, ways that they can get discounts on their stormwater bills, like teaching the teachers coming to classes because you're required to do it for your stormwater permit, so they get a 50% break on educating and allowing educators to come in and teach on conservation practices. For your industries, if they already have stormwater practices, like if they have retention and detention ponds where they're holding their stormwater for 48 to 72 hours on a regular basis, and it's got a cleaning mechanism for it, a water quality mechanism, you can give them a discount on that because they're holding that 1% longer, so it's not affecting your flooding and your stormwater. So there's some really creative ways that you can do that. Church organizations that have big buildings and parking lots could add detention or retention areas to direct their stormwater runoff onto, and in doing that, reduce their rate. There are just so many options, and there are so many people that have been doing it for a while, that you might want to, even residents in Franklin, Soil and Water in Franklin County, they give a discount if they put rain barrels on their downspouts. So, or implement rain gardens. So in their areas, just to hold the water and let it soak in and not add to the flooding and the stormwater issues. So there are a lot of communities doing stormwater utilities because it's needed for a funding mechanism. But there's also ways where you could be more community friendly and have these things that you can offer to help people out.
When P3 went through the study, they also did the research, what other communities have implemented the stormwater utility as well. And they have the list, it's in here.
Excuse me, I misunderstood something. I thought $166 was a flat fee, but it appears as though it is not. In fact, light manufacturing is 166,688.
It's not based on the square footage of impervious surfaces. And against the ERU, that comes up with the fee.
Okay, but I want to get to the fee that I thought was, overall of 166.
No, that's just example,
That's only the
the
light man.
average. Yeah, that's just an average.
There's gonna be a lot of little ones to make up for the ones that are big ones, because warehouses are coming in at 622.64 per month. And they may not look kindly toward that, just thinking.
Understand?
And the other medium manufacturer, so who decides what is what? Is that through the zoning? That they know what is what is anticipated? So that might be a bit of a harder sell when you're talking about $500 to $600 per month. That's quite a line item.
Understand?
So there's gonna have to be some real, campaigning to make, the medicine go down with a spoonful of sugar here.
So can I just speak to that a little bit? With regard to campaigning, this doesn't go out for a vote.
Oh, I understand that.
Well, I just want to
But
make sure
we don't
everyone in
have,
the room
but we don't
understands that.
want, negativity too.
Well, this,
But they have, I think the greater thing is information. They have to be prepared for this coming down, but I don't like getting surprises in the mail either.
right,
And I don't suppose who's ever the CEO of a company, of medium or warehousing will be real happy with seeing $5,000-6,000 a year.
well, the thing I would say that I'd like council to consider is that for years, we should have been doing this.
Well, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that.
When I talk to residents about
Mhm.
like I mentioned, I've talked to many residents now about, the police levy. And I told you the distribution, a third this way, a third that way, and a third on the fence. One person has hemmed or hawed about these residential statistics on what it would cost them. And that person's fear was literally because they're already maxed out on their pricing for their housing. And I'm sharing that with you because I think our residents know that flooding is a problem and they are desperate for relief. So I think that, and I mentioned this, I think last week, I've been feeling like the order of, how we ask for additional taxation, we need to be sensitive about this. But I don't think that anybody is wondering if we should be doing something about stormwater. The other thing I would say is folks that have storage units. We've talked about storage units. We've kidded around that we're the storage unit capital of Lincoln County. Those buildings take on a tremendous amount of water and push it right back
Look at the
out.
roof lines.
Right, and we're not getting revenue from
From
those,
that.
right? And so this would be a place for us to make a little bit of inroad with spaces that are contributing significantly to our stormwater.
Because they're taking out the normal or natural way to dispose of the stormwater, and they're putting concrete on it, and that's rather impervious. So there's the problem, but the problem is even longer than that, is that if we permit it to happen, then we end up with what we have. So we have to look at the root causes too. So we are partially responsible for the pickle that we're in.
Well, we have a remedy in front of us to
That's right.
consider.
That's right, I understand that.
Your zoning also has taken some of that in consideration. You're not building anything big anymore without putting retention ponds in. And you can also tell those factors out there, do you really need that much parking space? Put a retention pond in, and then your rates can come down. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done.
I understand that, and I'm not being contentious about it, I just wanna be informed, because I would think that, you might get some pushback, and maybe not. If they see that it's worth $5,000-6,000 a year, that you don't have a puddle in the parking lot, that might be of value to them.
Put some gardens on the top of the building.
I would just like to comment for it. As a resident who has been impacted by the flood, I understand the assessment and the concern for that. But as somebody who's been affected, I've already just this last flood, my costs were $4,000, just minimal. I'm paying more than that than what a utility would be. So as a resident, I'd rather see a utility than me continue to pay astronomically every time there's a flood.
If that money can be taken, take care of the problem.
Yes.
And, I mean, how many years has it been? Nobody's figured out how to take care of the problem. And it all goes down the Licking River where it's all blocked up down there. The county has done nothing as far as the dams in the Licking River. You're not gonna get anything done. It holds it back.
It's been on the table before, that same situation.
I have to say this last time, you know, I'm kind of like with you, but looking at the pictures, the way this was the last time, this is how it was all the way in the Newark. It wasn't just dammed up in one spot.
Well, yeah,
Even-
the ground was saturated, it didn't
Yeah.
have no place to go, period.
They literally activated their, fire, or their flood walls on Second Street. Because then, you know, they were feared of being flooding. But, do I give credit for a property that doesn't have anything on
You just don't get charged, probably.
Yeah, if you don't have water running there, we can't tell you.
Can, you kind of explain the chart, the 5-year capital improvement, it looks like a lot of the money's going other places other than projects.
Doesn't it work like all the others? It has to be specific to that. It can't be just used for,
They've got stuff in there for professional services, for administration, for other items. So I think your point is,
Where's
we're already paying for administration. Why are we taking money from this to help cover that administration? And I think, and now would you push your microphone back just a hair? Sure. Let's see if that helps. That's still.
I turned mine off. Do you want me to turn this one off?
Yeah,
when no one's-
pushing that. Holding that down,
Just hold it.
holding that.
Testing, 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 still. Anyway,
Everybody but sorry. It's just like watching television.
A little feedback.
You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, it just looked like lots of stuff going all kinds of different places, so.
right,
I think what they did was just give you an example of once the fund is created and there's a lot, you know, a balance in there. It will be utilized like the water fund, the public works fund and the wastewater fund. The advantage of creating this is I will create a special revenue fund and the money going in that will be strictly restricted to just stormwater, anything to do with it. We can even offset after it gets going, some of the wages for the public works superintendent or something like that, and that's just an option. That's why they're showing that you can take that out of there. But the advantage to this is it will restrict to where that money in there has to be spent for stormwater. So,
Yeah, I'd like to see a lot of those come out of there and just all go to stormwater. You know, the projects.
Well, definitely, we can work on that,
But this is
absolutely.
an example,
That
this
is
is
correct.
set in stone, okay.
I mean, it's gonna take a while. We're not gonna get the 280,000. It's gonna take a while to grow that, so.
Yeah, I was
you
just
know.
worried about all this money, like, if you're looking at this example, projects is only 56,000. Everything else is maintenance and capital and debt and professional.
Administration.
You're only getting 56,000 of that 282 to do a project.
Well, I think they're showing examples of like the debt that we use part of that for the in-kind money or the local match. But then we've acquired a grant to do a large project. So that's where that's why they're having those line items in there. They're just showing you an example of how that fund can be
Can be,
utilized.
Can be, yes.
The other thing I'd say is professional services. Somebody's got to plan the work before we
Yeah,
do the work.
engineering.
Yeah.
Because right now, when we have a project that's stormwater, we have to have an engineer. I'm taking those funds out of general fund and public works, which is basically getting the general fund hit 100%. Whereas if we had that fund, we would be taking it out of there.
The other thing I'd say, we certainly have the opportunity to do a postmortem each year. This is how much revenue we took in, this is where we spent it. And I think that, you know, that's not probably an exercise we often do for other types of funds, but I don't see a problem with having that conversation at the end of, especially the first, maybe our CFO feels differently, but.
Well, I disagree. We do that with every fund, every time you sit down to review your budget.
Yeah.
When we sit down for budget, you see every single expense to the penny, what every one of those funds are spending out of every line item. This will be no different. You would have a budget, we would appropriate, and you would see year to year, exactly line item for line item, what that fund is paying for. So, and we do that for all the funds.
Maybe teasing this one out though, especially in the first year or two would be helpful, because that will become the benchline for future spending. So if at the very beginning, we spend it, you know, all on X, we just want to make sure that X is really where we want to target.
Any other questions, concerns? Thank you. Oh, Mr. Weingarten.
A comment about the $600 fee on commercial properties. I think it's a good number. And I'll tell you why. You got 100,000 square foot commercial property that's dumping water into our storm system. Well, that's a drop in the bucket for them. You know, when you got Hendrickson and State Chemical, places like that, the retention pond that's by the cooling towers in the one property over there, those are for their cooling towers. That's not a retention pond. Okay, so that's a good number. I don't know if you've ever been in an industrial application when stormwater has backed up. It's a mess. It goes up the risers, blows through the roof. It's a mess. But they're not handling their stormwater. We are. So that $600 number is a good number. I think Kenny does a very good job with what he has, you know, but something more has to be done. And my understanding, that'll be a separate line item on your water bill.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think it's a great number. I think it's a great number for residential. You know, especially, you know, $6,000 a year for $100,000 square foot property, that's cheap flood insurance. You know, I don't know what you would do about the Kroger shopping center. You take each one of those, you know, like Kroger separately, and then
It's ownership.
the
Each
new
of the
dental
tenants,
place.
It's
each of the
ownership.
tenants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the
That's what
ownership
you're saying.
can,
Yeah, they do that by what, square footage?
yeah, and the owner can divide it up among the tenants. That's how it's gonna be done.
I think it's a good number. I really do.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Regarding Public Works, I just wanted to share that, we are working with, our solicitor on getting a formal interpretation of who is responsible for Route 40. So, we looked up ORC, Jung Han and I reviewed that together and, discussed that. And then we also asked for an official, interpretation from the solicitor. But I also wanted to share with you, you may have noticed from your OML updates about House Bill 370. House Bill 370 is a bill designed to push back the responsibility to ODOT for the maintenance of national and state roads back onto them, which further implies that, yes, right now we are technically on the hook. We actually looked up which years each of those current regulations have been on file, and they've been on file for over a decade each one. So I just wanted to share, we are getting official interpretation, not just, our reading of the tea leaves. And it sounds like there's work being done at the state level to push that back into the realm of ODOT. But it's certainly different than, I think our understanding has been for some time. But we are monitoring that closely, and we will have official information back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
It shows we're not the only village with the issue.
That's correct. The next one is Finance Subcommittee, and there's nothing that I know of. Economic Development Committee, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Nguyen.
Yes, I apologize. This item wasn't put on the agenda because it just came to us. But what I'm want to discuss is just kind of a heads up so that you're all aware. I think last year, most of you, except maybe for a couple of you that are new to council, know that when we conformed our boundaries from Union Township, the ORC states that a township has the right to ask for reparations from the community that conformed its boundaries. And that the goal of that is to help make them whole from the tax dollars they lost or would lose from the community conforming boundaries. Now, in Licking County, no other community has ever been asked to pay reparations, but because we did conform our boundaries, Union Township has asked for those reparations. So last year, I think most of you remember that the number was a lot higher than what we anticipated. It was $226,982 and some change. So we did receive word that the tentative number is a lot higher than that, over double that. Now, there's some issues that I'm concerned with that I'm not necessarily agreeing with the calculations that the county has done. They have double checked those numbers with the county prosecutor. However, I'm still not comfortable with those numbers. So I have put some emails out. I'm working on trying to get this completely explained so that I'm comfortable with what number we arrive at. I am hoping that I'm heading down the right path. I do believe that I believe the number is just not right, but so I want to let you know that once we get those numbers confirmed and I have some more information, we'll be bringing that back. But if the number stands at what it is now, we do not have enough budgeted for it because there's no way I would have ever budgeted the amount that they're asking, that they're saying we owe. So if it does prove that these numbers are accurate, then I will have to ask for another amendment to the appropriations. I have enough budgeted for the first half settlement because they will invoice us twice. Once, each time you receive your half settlement taxes. So I have enough to cover their first one. If this number is accurate, it would be when we go to make the second that I would have to ask for an amendment. I'm hoping maybe we don't, but we'll see. So that's, we just wanted to make sure you're aware that it's coming.
Can, if it is not possible to have it stabilized to its original cost and we have to up the ante, so to speak, are there funds available to do that?
There's unappropriated funds available. We're starting to get into,
Yeah, because there's 6 months to go.
Yeah. But yes, if we would have to stick to this number and we have it available, I just, hate to dip that far into it, but if we do, we do have it.
I have a question. Is this a one-time thing? This isn't regular
No,
because
it's
we're not part of them anymore.
12 years will be required to pay 12 years of reparations
And that's coming from our taxes in Hebron. I guess I don't know where it's coming from, why they want, because we're separated now. And then
well, I guess the intent of the reparations to a township is when you conform your boundaries, you're taking the tax dollars that the township would have gotten if you stayed in it. So for that shock to their general fund or to their funds in general, they have the ability to ask for reparations. And so then it's used, there's a calculation method and it goes on their valuation. And in my mind, it should be only what would have came from the incorporated area at that time.
And it's like they're not doing anything for us anymore. So
It doesn't-
they're not, it
That's-
doesn't have out of their budget to do anything for us, so I don't see where they.
Well, I don't see, I agree with you, but
It's kind of like a penalty that we took their,
yeah.
yeah.
You know, a little back history even more. I mean, we knew that there was a possibility of this, but we weighed what was best for the residents to not have to pay all the double taxes for fire. And then the village take a little bit of hit with paying reparations.
Is
But
there any way to fight it? Like to
No,
say that's
it's-
too high?
no, it's a law.
Yeah.
They have the right. Now, more history, we are the only community in Licking County that has ever been asked to pay reparations.
Maybe in the entire
Because they
state.
don't like.
Maybe, yes, maybe.
The entire state.
In the entire state, typically, and the history of this in Licking County, Buckeye Lake conformed its boundaries from Union Township. Union Township asked for no reparations. I think Newark, conformed its boundaries from Newark Township. Newark Township asked for nothing. It's not a requirement, it's only a requirement if the township asks for it. And they ask for it.
Isn't that like a precedent? That we are now the precedent that we've asked for, I mean, it's just a conversational
Could be.
possibility.
But there's state law that allows for it, so.
And the others, did not exercise that legality, they just didn't do it.
Well, the township, I guess, didn't feel the need to exercise that with Buckeye Lake. I can't speak to why they
There
didn't, but.
there wasn't anything that they could draw taxes on, up to Buckeye Lake, that was probably the reason.
Oh, I'm sure there was,
Well,
there's
there's-
taxes,
Yeah,
yeah.
but,
But
But,
there's no industry.
well, there's still taxes, I mean,
yeah,
I think
I mean,
there's legal in the
Now,
South.
is that, when we conform to boundaries, is that when it stops on increasing, or every time we put in something new, we have to keep adding to that, or?
well, that's part of my questions. One of the reasons they gave me, at least the auditor gave me, is that it was because their valuation had increased. Of course, it did, ours increased as well. But I'm looking at, we should only have to pay for what was incorporated at the
At the
time.
time.
We may have to pay 12 years,
Yeah.
but it should be based off of the incorporated area when we, at the end when we
Yeah.
left, and not what we may gain since then. Or, you know, if we would have something that's in the corporation limit, grow and be big and be a big tax cut, it shouldn't have that impact as well. But like I said, I have some emails out, some questions out. I've got Wes involved in it. Pete Griggs is involved in it. So we're going to look at it. But right now, the numbers, there's a few other things that just don't jive at this point.
So I would just like to say, we can be bitter and angry, or we can just move on. This is a choice we made. It was voted on unanimously by council. And pardon? Okay, just checking. Just want to make sure, I don't want to miss anything, because I want us to be able to work in good faith every opportunity we have. And I want us to always take the high road. And, we did make this choice. We did vote on this unanimously. I do think it's the right thing. I don't think I don't think residents should be paying tax out to Union Township. They were getting nothing for it.
Exactly.
And they were paying double taxation on fire. So having said that, this was absolutely the right decision for our residents. And so it is painful. It's a disappointment. Don't like the interpretation. We're seeking additional counsel to make sure we can understand it, because we ultimately do need to be able to explain to voters why we are going to shell out potentially $500,000 to Union Township to get nothing. Okay, so I'm not saying it doesn't rub me the wrong way, but ultimately, I think that the team is doing the best it can to get answers. And I think that we just need to move on and tuck this in our, hip pocket for the next time somebody asks us to please conform the boundaries and bring them in. I think at that point, we have a conversation about what we consider it, but you're paying the reparations, we're not. Or something akin to that, because long-term, in 15 years, this will be a relief, right? It'll be over. But we gotta survive those 12 years.
Right, and I agree, and I have no problem being a team player, it's the law, they've requested it. But I wanna do my due diligence, just make sure that the Village of Hebron is paying what's
If there's
fair.
any,
And
Yeah.
I was on like she was, the understanding that that's what it costs, that's what we're gonna pay. We're not paying extra every year. Crazy.
Yeah.
like a large extra.
I can't,
Well, when we did that, the property values hadn't went up yet. Correct?
Well, and I understand that there would be some increase because of it, I mean, even our valuation here has went up considerably.
Correct.
It's just some of the other things that they have figured into this that I'm not comfortable with, so.
Thank you.
The next item is police committee. I think this has a very similar economic committee, economic development committee, I'm sorry. There's no report from that committee, or the mayor has something. Go
Just a
ahead.
couple things, sorry. I just wanted to say that next week, we're planning on covering the comp plan. I know, folks have reviewed that. I think all of your comments and concerns are in. So my personal hope is that we're going to have a serious dialogue about a vote next week. If there is anything that's causing you heartburn, please let us know. Because I'd like to get ahead of that, but I'd really like to finalize this, get it out, get resident feedback, get buy-in and move on, because we're going to have to redo it very soon. And part of that is getting the residents exposed to it so that they can let us know what areas they want us to improve. The second thing I just wanted to share is the Iowa visit that we just completed. It was very, very heartening. I mentioned to Councilmember Porter that I felt like it was good to go talk to some folks in Iowa. They're pretty plain spoken people. They're a lot like people around here. They say it like they see it. They gave us some great suggestions on things we need to be looking at and concerned about. And so I really appreciated their openness. We actually went on site behind the scenes at one of the facilities, and then we also went to a full built out facility to stand alongside the road and hear what we could hear. So I'll be able to call back the residents who had called me worried about the noise, to be able to answer their questions on that and tell them what I experienced. It was really good. I'm really glad that I did it. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those either now or later as you think of them. But I think it was a good investment of time.
Our representatives from Microsoft, as far as you know, planning to make a return visit anytime soon.
We actually did talk about that. They'd like to do another community event to welcome people in and answer additional questions now that folks have had time to think about it.
I think that's good. That's good strategy for them and good information for us.
I think one of the things that has been kind of, going in the back of my mind for a while, and I did say this to the Microsoft team, while it's a data center and we think we know what data centers look like because of Aetna and other locations, Microsoft isn't a scrappy techie, get every penny out of every employee kind of mentality. We hear some of that from some of the other tech firms where maybe they don't pay as well, maybe they don't have as good of benefits, maybe they don't have as good of a rapport. Microsoft is a stand-up organization in the sense of their jobs are well-paying jobs. They have asked great questions about, even commuter safety, right? And, talking about sidewalks to make sure if people want to walk to work, they can do that. And it's not about cutting corners in these dialogues. So from my perspective, I think that if you were to try to find an organization that their values match values of Hebron, I think this is probably actually a good fit. And the reason I care about that is I want our residents to buy in ultimately. And I think that they're giving us an opportunity to find places that we can work well together so that long-term our residents might accidentally be very happy to have Microsoft here. I know change is hard and folks are apprehensive. But the questions that Microsoft asks and the way that they're going about the project has been very open to what do you need locally so that we can do a good job and be good partners.
So they're going to build, or when they do build, be in increments, so it won't be the whole thing at one time. You have building A and building B, and 2 years later, C and D.
Exactly, and so I think that incremental work allows them to start deploying and employing and getting revenue so that they can then offset the next cost and the next cost and the next cost. Although it sounds like if they have, the work, if they have enough need for those data centers quickly,
Pretty fast.
it could be pretty fast, yeah. That's all I wanted to share, thanks.
Thank you. The next is the police committee. The council talked about the police levy issue. If I may point out this, there is a similar parallel comparison between what Ms. Morgan talked about, the property value. Same thing with this police value, because the voter voted in 1984 values. So it only brings in a very small amount of money that we need to ask the voter to consider to bring the valuation up till today. And I think part of the conversation that we had last time was to ask the council members to see if you can go talk to your constituents to get to gauge their reaction. I don't know if you have done so or not.
I haven't really talked to them, so no. Anybody else? I just know from, we're adding the storm levy and then the police levy. I mean, I think we've already consensus that we're gonna put it on. We do want the levy, it's which mill we're gonna put on. I think most people will vote yes if it's not shockingly more, but
But not to confuse, it's not a levy for the storm.
no, it's a
But it's an
levy for the
expenditure.
It is an expenditure, but it's
Yeah.
not a levy per se, so don't confuse that if you're talking to someone about it.
police. No, they're just gonna see their bill each month saying, we just added $6 here, and now we're gonna add this here.
If you know anything about Hebron, and we all do, what's the number one thing that people get agitated about? I think it's water. And it's $6.52 per resident, or if you have two dwellings in the same property, it's the same $6.52, okay? If they can get service, meaning at least not as much water accumulation, I think that would not be a difficult sell. On the other hand, with the police, the same thing is happening. You want police service, you want 24/7. Then there's this little thing called expenses that go with it. Now, I'm not real thrilled with having to pay additional, but I'm also not real thrilled and no one answering my call. So which of the two do you want? do you wanna pay? Or you don't wanna pay, so don't go to Wendy's one time a month or something and look at it that way rather than being assessed. It is kind of an aggravation, I'm not saying that it isn't, cause I'll have to pay it too. But on the other hand, I think it's important that we do have competent, police force 24/7. I don't know how we can get away from it. The city, village is going to grow eventually. It'll be a city. Can you imagine that? But eventually, these things are going to happen. And you just can't start at square one all the time. You don't have to like some of this, but somehow you have to pay for certain things.
I think everybody agrees, yeah, we have to pay for both, but it's a matter of what mill do you think will pass? What mill is the residents gonna say yes to and which
Yeah,
mill? are gonna
that's
say no
smart.
to?
You have to know that.
And I don't know which mill that would be.
You know who could tell us?
Who's that?
The residents.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if folks are willing to start talking to residents, I'm happy to go with you. I think that we've just got to get in front of some and start testing this out as a concept. I know it's not fun to be yelled at or whatever. It comes with the territory, right? So maybe we go as pairs. But if we could just get in front of the residents and start talking to them about this, they may have a way better idea than we've even considered. And so I think if we could just get a little bit of feedback, that would probably help each of us kind of formulate that in our minds. And then we can come back together in this space and actually get comfortable with a millage. And then the other thing is, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't pass. But we do need to consider the exercise, right? And this isn't about making residents feel guilty if they don't want to vote for it. This is literally democracy at work, right? Like, tell us what you think.
Because they're really in the driver's seat.
Yes, absolutely, and they should be.
And they should be.
Yeah, so I think just getting out there, having a conversation, what kind of millage are you comfortable with? What would you support? And then getting that onto the ballot and having an open conversation with them along the, the course of the summer and the fall.
Would this be an opportunity, maybe coupled with another subject or two, where you could have, an open house, shall we say, in some facility and have other issues, looked at?
I'm so glad you said that. Because I would really like to start doing town halls. And I feel like it would give residents an opportunity to come in and just get it off their chest, right? Again, is it fun, if folks yell? No, not really.
It's not much fun.
But it doesn't hurt. And just getting it off of their chest and onto our list, if it's something we can fix and we can afford to fix it, then let's do it. If we can't, we can't. But I think just getting those items out and off of people's hearts and minds and onto a piece of paper and looking for solutions, it makes sense. I will say that I asked earlier today, when, if we've done town halls, and it sounds like that probably hasn't been something that we've done. So it might be a stretch and we might be kind of on shaky territory at first, but I'm okay with that. I think unless we try things, we won't know if they'll work. And if it's, absolutely terrible and they come with pitchforks, then we can reconsider, but I think it wouldn't happen.
Well, the good thing about that is the attempt is made to make the communication transparent. They know what we're thinking anyway, and they'll find out what they're thinking. And maybe we can have a relationship where it's not adversarial. I mean, at least all the time. I don't think we really have it now, but you never know what can inflame a population and have that happen. And maybe, well, you just don't know. you go for it and you're a little bit blind, but you have good intentions, you just don't know what's going to happen. And as long as not an intentional public slaying, we'll probably be all right, you know, so, you don't know, you just don't know until you try it.
I mean, the only thing I see is you'd have to really publicize, you know, town hall committee, because we already put it out there, council meetings open, any issues come, and this is what we get.
So the thing I would say about council, and I've heard politicians in Hebron say this many times, well, they don't come. If you think about, and actually we have students in the back of the room that could talk about this, this isn't even a regular council meeting. If you think about a regular council meeting, there is so much
Difference.
pomp and circumstance and ritual to what we do. We're voting on minutes, we're voting on this, we're talking about ordinances that are not in plain English. And it's very overwhelming. I've had people tell me, I feel uncomfortable because it seems like there's an order that you do things in, and I don't want to say the wrong thing at the wrong time, or not be allowed to come up and speak when I'm, you know, when I want to. And I feel like a town hall is as close to a rodeo as you can get without horses, right? So, I mean, it would just be an open, basically an open mic night. Depending on how many people come, we may have to say, can you keep it to 3 minutes per person until everyone can get through, and then we can cycle back. But I do feel like we know what's happening up here.
Right, oh
But
yeah,
I
it's
don't
hard
think,
out there.
yeah, I do think it's hard out there.
But I still think it's gonna be hard to get people here if, you know, without, because usually they see the agenda, it's like, oh, they're gonna talk about this, I need to get there. But just an open town hall, I just think we're gonna have to really publicize it to get people to come.
That's another column for Brittany. And then the water bill.
Hey, the next one is water wastewater committee. There's no report.
They're starting to drill the well.
That's correct.
I
Number drill well number 7. We have the subcontractor basically ready to start to drill well number 7. The next one is the personnel committee. There's no report on that one. Now, are there any other items that are not listed that you would like to talk about?
Y'all were just at the building, what did you think?
I think a lot of it's cosmetic. I think a lot of that could be cleaned up and fixed up. You go down to the new part. We got all where the first graders used to be and all that. Every room's got its own bathroom in it. It's set up for whatever you want to do. If you want to make office space, I think it's that part. To do anything else, it's gonna take a little bit. I'd like to see what the engineer is gonna say at the end on what their recommendation is, but I think the biggest thing up here is air conditioning. I mean, that's the bulk of it.
You don't have to do everything at once.
No.
And that's good because the building is constructed in certain additions, shall we say. And I doubt that everything's gonna be done at once. If it's kept in its normal, its original current state, that's not likely to happen depending on what happens to it. But I think we look at the building and what needs to be done. What the asset is, the 9 acres. If you tore that building down, your 9-acre value would go up, in my opinion. And that could be an asset just as it is. So the price of the building of $375,000 is a house today. So what we're really doing is buying a house for expenditure, and we get 9 acres. Now, I must say that I wasn't the happiest person about thinking about acquiring that building because of the need for it to be renovated and extensively, but then again, you don't have to do it all at once. And we'll see how it goes, and so like, you're not gonna, most people will not pay for their entire home in one payment, not likely, but possible. But every so in a while you make this payment, pretty soon it's yours. It's a big step, it's one that we haven't, done before that I know of. But like I say, you're probably gonna hear it again, the asset is the 9 acres. Because if that place were demolished, you'd have a really nice patch of property that would be valuable for not just residential, but someone who really wants to do something unusual that we've never heard of before. We have to be open to that too. Don't have to like it, but we have to be open to it.
I've got a comment for yours. Do you understand what it will cost to tear that building down?
I do not know, but I have an idea that it's gonna be exceeding the purchase price.
Oh, well over that.
Yeah, that's what I'm
There's another
saying.
zero on the end of that.
I understand that.
So, you know, do you remediate everything in it and then tear it down? Or do you remediate everything in it and now you got an asset for the village? You know,
Well,
it works both ways.
those are decisions that'll have to be made. And like I said just a few minutes ago, it all doesn't have to be done at once.
Maybe.
Well, unless we have a fairy godmother coming down with money, I doubt that we're gonna be able to do that. That's my current thought.
Well, what I just heard was nobody is saying, heck, no. That's what, and I take that as, yes, let's do it.
Well, I was less enthusiastic about the purchase until I factored in the 9 acres.
Yeah, I'm with it now. The 9 acres is the biggest value now, and once we get the estimates and the recommendations from the engineering firm, then we'll know what the building is. I was impressed with how nice it was in there. Everybody talks so terrible about it, it's awful, and the ceiling's falling in and blah, 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 and it was very nice. I didn't think it was atrocious or anything.
Did you see a community center when you walked into the gymnasium? No.
I saw beautiful wood floors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the gym
And I
and
knew
the
they were in
stage, we can take like, Millersport has their community theater people. There's a small community theater in Newark. There's possibilities there if you can get the right people in there to do it.
But for the same reason, we have a community center, same reason why Lakewood can't do it, you have to make it accessible to everybody. And that's not cheap.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to see that we, put in time clocks for every department, in the village of Hebron.
For every department or?
Every department, we're growing. Let's get it started now.
Do none of them have time clocks now,
No.
nowhere?
I hate to say this, but years and years ago, I was a lone wolf. No offense, Mr. Wolf. In promoting that, and you know how far it got?
Well, I'm asking now.
The same wolf. Oh,
It doesn't have to
and I
be
don't,
a time clock per se, you can log into your computer.
If they log on back and there were
Workstation
Buildings
in,
or work.
in a workplace, I understand. Well, we can definitely take this to the personnel committee to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be something completely separate than payroll, so
Yes.
I mean, I'm still gonna have to take the time sheets that I have, it's gonna have to just be in addition to it. When we were at the local government conference, I was in a session that had Chris was in there with me, there were probably 200 fiscal officers in there, and that's all that was in there. And the question was asked to the whole room, how many had time clocks? There was only a few that raised their hands, and most of them have done away with them, and they're moving the other way, basically the way we're doing it now.
Yeah, we never had time clocks in work, but we had kiosks where we could clock in and out.
Yeah, we don't have, go ahead.
Do you do time sheets now?
Of course, yes. The only people who do not do time sheets are the people who are salaried. They're
Correct.
not required to, but anybody that's hourly. We also require leave request forms. They're always attached. And I keep very close track of that. And it's audited by the auditor when they came in. They asked me for all the time sheets and they matched them up, and
The department head signed off on each time sheet.
department heads sign off on their staff, and then Mr. Chen signs off on his departments, and the police chief on his.
Yeah, but like you said, a lot of times it's not time clocks anymore. You get to your computer, your workstation, and you log on, and that's actually how we're paid at mine. It's a program. You log on, you do your whatever, and then you log off, and that's actually what goes to payroll to bill. But it would be the expense of the program to have people log in and out.
But the effect is the same.
Yeah, it's just, you get your computer, you log on, you're here.
Our hospital has, our office has it through the hospital, it's called Paycom. There seemed to be consensus that they found more flaws and errors in it, and people who maybe were on their way to work, but they might have been wastewater, they had to not go into the office first, they had to go, and so they weren't able to clock in or log in, and it was starting to pose problems, so they did away. That was some of the reasons why they, I'm not saying one way or the other, I don't really have a vote in, it's whatever council wants to do, but I'm just giving you some of the things that.
Ours had that too. I mean, ours, where you have a 6 minute, sway and whether you clocked in on time or not, but then also your supervisor could also change that whenever, if you want to stay 6 minutes over because you were a little late, well, then he could change that.
And then, like my husband, they travel all over the state. They don't leave from the shop. They leave from their house, so they're on their phone. I clocked in, I left the house at this time. I was at the job site at this time. It doesn't have to be computer at work. It could be on your phone. Yeah, there's lots of different programs out there too.
But at the end of the day, those kind of programs are still no different than a timesheet. You are still depending on them to be
To be
honest.
honest of when
No
they started.
different. So there's, instead of paying for a program like that, we just use the timesheets because it's still on the honor system, no matter how you look at it. Now, maybe a time clock would be different if you actually had to come into your, right. But other than that, all those programs really serve no different purpose than our timesheets do.
Other than their GPS on their truck saying, yes, he was in his driveway or he was across town and Bob Evans.
But we're not gonna low check every employee's car, right?
Right.
Just checking.
Okay, no, that would be crazy. But anyways, but yeah.
Yeah,
At ours, you can use your phone, but you have to be connected to the Wi-Fi
At the
at the
Yeah.
location. So if
yeah, they're
you're
out.
pulling into work, you can, but you can't do it off site.
Yeah, there's lots of different things out there, but yeah.
I suspect that we can take this item to the personnel committee for discussion. Any other topics?
Richard Friday.
Thank you for the reminder. Any other visitor comments?
We can never get them up.
I know, I'm looking at it right now.
I'm gonna reach out to your teacher and tell him that you guys need to come up and say something at least once.
We didn't say that.
Come up with a good question.
Is this for an assignment that when you attend, you write up a, for lack of a better word, report and you submit it? And then you are graded on its content and style, would that be right?
Sorta, we are in AP government and we do we need 10 hours of civil service hours. So attending board meetings or council meetings or interviewing board members or something like that. And then at the end of the year, we write a paper on things we've done, what we've learned, things like that.
And what surprised you, Fred? Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're reaching to the end of this meeting. Can I have,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
we need to have a roll call?
7:29, Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Nauer.
Yes.
Ms. Chapman. Yes. Mr. Fuller.
Yes.